It was a death trap. We was in a death trap together. The private prisons in the 90s in Louisiana were ran for profit, so they would have a skeleton crew, which wasn't adequate, watching all these violent people that we were locked in there with. Yeah. And whereas in like Louisiana DOC, Angola, DeQuincy, WCI, any of those places, you always had a guard on the dorm with you physically to see what's going on. In these private prisons, the dorms were separate from the key where the guards were at, and they'd only have like 2 or 3 for like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, or 8 tiers. I can't remember exactly. So you were basically on your own in these dorms. Yep. Unless they happened to walk by and see a commotion, you could get beat to death up in there. So if you didn't know how to stand on your own too and take up for yourself, you were in for a hard time. Now, I got transferred to Allen on a disciplinary from DeQuincy because we were eating shrooms in the field over there. They had a cow field, and we used to do things like they called fence rowing, where you had a hoe and you had to get, you had to get your cut, and you pull it back from the fence, and you do all the lines, all the fences in the whole prison. Then we were doing farm work. It was slave labor, right? And
you sentenced to field labor too.
You sentenced to hard labor, so when you get there, that's where I got my work ethic from, because there's a certain part of me that's sadistic and likes being driven in the heat and hurry up, next one, next row, because if you fell behind, they'd put you in the hole, and the hole didn't even have a fan. At least in your dorm, you had a fan with no air conditioning in Louisiana. I'm getting off track again. So I arrive in Allen on a disciplinary. They put me in the lockdown unit at the time, Mars. And we all thought, because there was like 5 or 6 of us that came there on the disciplinary, that we were going to have to go through the work and cell block first. And in a normal DOC camp, we would have. They wouldn't have just, it's cool, you go down the walk, but that's what happened. They came that night and they let us down the walk. I get down the walk, I put all my stuff on my bed, put it up. The next morning, I go to chow. I wake up, go to chow. And that night while I was in there, though, I got to tell you this part. There was this one big black dude, bro. He just looked fucking scary. You know what I'm saying? It was one of those people where you say in your mind, man, I hope I don't have to get into it with him. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And he was just kind of throwing his weight around and shit and barking, and you could tell that, he was an alpha in there. Yeah. Well, we go to chow, eat, food's horrible as usual, come back, and this is where the drama happens, because I go to my bed and I see my lockers broke into. But it's only one locker, because you had a head locker, then you had a foot locker at your feet. Yeah. The foot locker had a lot of stuff in it too. It's always made $99 stores. Right. I had money.
And that's a big deal in there if you're making stores.
In there, yeah. Especially if you can't protect it. You know what I'm saying? I could protect it though. So I see my shit's broke into, and I thought in my head what an old timer told me when I first went to prison the year before. He said, man, if anybody ever steals your shit, breaks in your locker, this is how you handle it. And that's exactly how I handled what I told him. What I did was I took all the stuff out of my foot locker, all the soups and shit that they didn't get. I put it on my bed, and I started making bold statements. I said, I don't know who did it, but if your bitch ass don't come down here and fight me for it, the next time you take a piss, you might as well squat on that shitter because you's a bitch. And I was trying to make them come out in that water and fight me over it. Yeah. Because, on one hand, in the back of your mind, you're nervous as hell because you got to make a statement. Right. Because I'm not living like that, And so I'm sitting there, I'm calling them all kind of bitches and hoes and insulting their parents and their whole bloodline. Nobody's coming out there. Nobody's coming and fighting me in the back of the dorm. I told them, I said, if you win, you can have the rest of it. Nobody's coming. They all migrated to the TV room. So I start, I'm jumping around, giving a little shot to my face. I ain't getting pissed, getting myself mad to go deal with this. I go in that fucking TV room. I go at it again. I tell them, I'm gonna turn that fucking TV off if a motherfucker don't come back here and fight me for the, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm disrupting the program now, you know?
Right, yeah.
And when I did that, that's when that big old dude fucking jumped up. He said, I ain't having you talking all this shit around me, white boy. And he fucking, I'm going to get my shoes. He goes out the TV room, right? So I'm watching him go. I said, fuck that. I get out my seat. I'll go out the door, and I'm going to sneak him. I'm trying to sneak him. You know, I'm not trying to fight fair with this guy. But as soon as I come out the door to do it, all the black dudes in there start beating on the windows, and they say, oh, watch out, watch out, watch out, here the white boy come. So as I'm coming up to him, he turns around, he squares up with me. We start fighting, swinging, bam, bam. Bam! I hit him with this overhand right, bro, that I felt my hand crunch his face. Like I felt something break. And he just hit the ground like a fucking sack of potatoes. He was out too, bro. Like totally. And at that point, it was like the whole dorm went, ooh. It was like 2 other white guys in there. Cliff Penn was in there.
He was about his business.
Cliff was in there. But he's on the ground. I said, fuck this. I'm going to kill him. I jump on the ground and I start hooking him in his head, bro. And I'm hitting his fucking head. And his head's hitting the fucking window because I don't want him to wake up. I'm scared of the motherfucker. That's how big he was.
Yeah, yeah.
And finally, somebody jumps on me from behind, like tries to hit me. And I feel somebody pull him off. And I look over and it's this dude, Juvenile, a black dude I did time with in other prisons that we were cool with. Dude tried to attack me from behind. He grabbed the dude, threw him in the shower. I said, they ain't going down like that. They start fighting, right? And I look over, the dude that I was fighting, who's from Baton Rouge, I don't want to call his name. We friends, you know, we ended up friends after. But he's back by his bunk. He's like this, bro. He done got his shoes on now because when we first went at it, to be fair, he had shower shoes on. He's doing this, bro. And they're trying to hold him up to come back and get his, you know, bearings onto him to come fight me. Well, all of a sudden, I'm hoping the damn guard's about to break the shit up, to be honest, maybe see it. I'm not going to call for help, but, you know, I'm hoping, you know, this could be over with before I have to rematch his ass, you know?
You feel like you did what you had to do.
Yeah. Well, all of a sudden, the crowd parts like this, and he comes running at me like a fucking freight train, bro. All I did was this, look. Whoop, I pivot, did a little sidestep. He runs into the bars in the front of the dorm and cracks his head fucking open, bro, on the bars. Bloop, blood starts skeeting everywhere. He grabs me, bro. He picks me up over his fucking head, bro, and goes to slam me, and I fucking did that gypsy twist, bro. Bam! I land back down on my feet, and I started swinging on him again, and all of a sudden, he like posts me up against the front bars of the bars in the front of the dorm with the guards on the other side. He pulls me, he goes real low. He said it. I don't want to fight no more. I was like, fuck, I'm good. I said, okay, man. You know, I stopped. The next thing you know, the guards came in, they took us out. And as soon as the guards grabbed me, bro, and got me out that door, I'm going to kill that fucking white boy. I'm going to kill that motherfucker. He started going off, bro. And I'm in the key now. They done locked me in the key. He comes up and we go like nose to nose through the little bars. It was like little squares. We're like that, looking at each other. And then they took him off and they took me off to jail, inside the jail, the dungeon. I'm in the dungeon for like a week before they let me out. But while I'm back there, they had guards coming down there to take a look at me, because they heard about it and they wanted to know who did that to homeboy, because he was so big and scary. He had a reputation already around there. And I just had the feeling like of doom. I'm gonna have to get out and fight this big fool again. And maybe next time I'm not so lucky, you know? And we was in there like a week. They let us out from our isolation time. I came down to walk. I went in the dorm. It was like instant quiet. As soon as I go into the same dorm, down there in Jupiter, the field dorm, the projects. Instant quiet. I walk in, nobody's saying shit. I went and put my stuff up. I end up going out on the yard. A few minutes later, a little while after being on the yard, I seen him coming. And I'm like, oh no, here it goes again. Well, I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna fucking square you. You don't got no choice.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? I'm gonna fight him again. I don't care how big he is.
Were y'all on the same tier in the hole?
No. Because the guards were going and looking at him. I cracked his eye bone later on when we made friends. He told me, he said, man, feel this. Like, he let me feel. He said, yeah, bump, you fucking did that with that punch, you asshole. Because we were cool, you know. He wasn't the one that stole my shit. He was just trying to watch TV. And that's why he got pissed off, you know. And then after, but anyway, so we're on the yard and I see him coming, walking, right? I jump up ready to fight again. He gets like a little ways away from me, but not within arm's length. He says, I just want you to know that fucking dude that stole your shit, he's going to PC today. That's what he told me. He said, I'm fixing to go get him right now. And he left off that tier, he left off that yard, and he went into that thing, and wasn't just a few minutes past, I seen that dude coming out in handcuffs going to the block. He checked in. The one that stole my shit. And it was the same guy that tried to attack me from behind while I was wearing out homeboy on the ground. And my buddy Juvenile took care of him.
So you never did actually get to fight the dude who actually...
Nah, he left camp. He never came back out the block. And he was gone. And after that, I didn't even have to lock my locker no more. Nobody touched my shit no more. And I even heard a story after I was there for like a year. And I already had that nickname, Smash. They were calling me Smash. I heard a story. One dude came in there, didn't know what was going on and was going to go in my locker. And they told him, don't do that. Because he's going to fight somebody and it probably won't even be you. You know? So pick somebody else. Because that's what it is. Like in there, it's like electricity. It takes the path of least resistance. As far as the people that, are trying to shark people and all that bullshit, you know?
And so... me being in Ireland, I know exactly what he's talking about. And it's like once you start fighting for yourself, like you said, they're looking for somebody. It's easier to pick somebody who's just not going to fight.
Yeah. That's exactly how it is. And it's funny because like the booty bandits and shit, the ones that are really on that shit, it's like you look at the person that they're punking, he's like, that's who's fucking you. You know what I'm saying? They ain't shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, usually it's something, one of them that it done happened to them at some point. Right. And they just turned into a predator.
Yeah.
But you go other places, like other states, you don't got to worry about that shit. That's the only good thing about the gangs, man. When they got gangs around, you ain't got to watch people get punked and all that shit with that, Now, you got sex offenders come in there, he's going to get bluesed. He's going to get cut up, whatever they can do to him. But it's not just because they weak. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is how Louisiana's animalistic, man. If you can't stand on your own 2 feet here, you will, or the pecking order, you'll sink all the way down to the bottom. And I mean, it's low.
Let me ask you this question, and this is just a question that comes up a lot in content creation. Being from Louisiana, a white guy from Louisiana, and you've been, like you said, you've been to a few places, man. Being white from Louisiana and being in prison white in Louisiana, it's a different kind of survival method.
Then if you go like this, because I've done time in California and Colorado, what you're talking about is the politics.
Yeah.
Like the racial politics they got. I tell you, when we was in jail together, because we was in Allen together, Melk and I used to always look around and be like, man, I wish they had some more white people in here, And then I went to jail out in California. I'm in LA County Jail. At first, I was like, oh, there's a white gang in here? I said, yeah, man, this is good, bro. You know what I'm saying? This is going to be good, It's not going to be as dangerous as shit in here, I'm thinking, I go back there, man, I figure out the only people they victimize are white. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's bullshit. It's pussyfied, And they don't like us naturally because we don't realize it, but we grow up in a black culture down here.
Right.
And you go other places, they think we talking like a wigger or whatever, like we want to be black. And I think to myself, man, it's like, you ought to see some of my friends. Like, you think I'm bad,
Right.
I listen to rock and roll, bro. You know what I'm saying? A lot, like it's a trip, but they naturally don't like you. And you naturally don't like them. And I didn't want to run that shit in LA County Jail. I didn't want to be with them, but they was never, but what I did was I ended up migrating out of the politic dorm into the merit dorm, which is a program for Christians, is what happened. Because I didn't want to be around that shit, but they never could get a crew around big enough, strong enough around me to do anything about it, So California jail took me by surprise, bro. It did. I did not expect to go into the jail system in Los Angeles and find Jim Crow-like rules. Like the white phone, the black phone, and the homie phone, the white newspaper. Louisiana, we were all mixed up. You hang with who you're friends with. There was none of that racial politics, Now, when I seen it at first, I was like, there's a white gang in here? I said, man, this might be good. I'm thinking it's good because when we was in prison together in the 90s,
We were looking for solid whites.
well, when you got so much pepper and barely any salt,
Just so people know, like, what would you say that the racial differential is for
in
blacks and whites in
Louisiana,
Louisiana?
you
Out
might
of
have
one
3
white.
or 4 whites on a 100-man dorm.
Right. That's right.
That's what it was. Now you go out to California on a 100-man dorm, you're gonna have 30 whites or something, and then you have 20 Mexicans or whatever, and they run with the whites, so it's the same car in a way. And so you on some dorms, you'll have 80 Mexicans and 20 whites, and then about as many blacks.
Right.
And it changes all the dynamics in the politics, man. So I go into when I first arrived at the LA County Jail, bro. I've been up for weeks on methamphetamines, right? I was hooked at the time. I was in my addiction, going through it. I haven't slept in all these weeks, a good night's sleep. I go into a holding tank. I lay down and go to sleep. I didn't realize what was white, Mexican, black. I didn't know that. Well, apparently it was a homie dorm with mostly, I guess, Southsiders in it, And I lay down and go to sleep. I guess I farted in my sleep, right? And I fucking wake up and I'm like half, because like I said, I probably slept 15 minutes before this happened.
Yeah.
Out of like not sleeping for weeks. So I was like out of it. And I look up and there's this little Mexican dude, bro. He's standing over me. He's got his finger pinched on his nose like that. And he's saying, I bust his ass open. Well, dude, when I heard that shit, in Louisiana, somebody talks about your ass, they're trying to get in it. So apparently in California, that's how they say fart. That's just slang for fart. So it wasn't even an insult or something, but it sounded like a threat. So I'm laying on the floor. I look up and see that shit. I got up and I said, bam! I hit him as hard as I could. And he went down. Next thing I know, the whole fucking cell jumps on me, bro. The whole cell. That one, you mess with one bean, you get the whole burrito. That's what happened, dude. It was like 20 Mexicans, bro. I tried to fight for a second, man. I'm fucking, and all of a sudden, boom, boom. Finally, I was like this. And then the guards came to the door and opened the door and they all backed off. Well, when they did that, I seen the same motherfucker that had started it. I ran over there and bam, got his ass, right? And then started migrating towards the door. On my way out, it would have been cool. But on my way out, one of them right there said, bam, and gave me a gnarly ass black eye, bro. Yeah.
Now, your first introduction to LA County.
LA County jail politics, bro. Yeah. Because in Louisiana, we don't have that shit. We look at if another inmate tells you to do something in Louisiana jail and you do it, the next thing he's going to tell you is to suck his pickle, bro. That's it. You know what I'm saying? But in California jail, if one of these shot callers tell you not to do something and you do it or whatever, then all of a sudden, you're like AWOL from the army or something. It's some weird shit that I wasn't ready to just grasp right away. Well, when I get to the dorm, I'm still thinking, man, this white gang shit's probably going to be pretty good. That was Mexicans that got into it last time. But, once I find my peoples, you know what I'm saying, then it'll be all good, Camp Snoopy. Well, I get in there and it ain't all good because they don't like the way we talk. Like, people raised in Louisiana don't realize it. You leave from out here and go other places, and people think you act black because we're raised in a black culture down here. And I was thinking to myself, you ought to see some of my friends. People like Tim with slugged all the way out, Paul Wall style and all that shit. So I go through this dorm and I stays to myself, bro, because I peeps right away that this is some bullshit, and it's against everything that I learned coming up in the system in Louisiana, which I didn't understand. What I was really dealing with was a cultural clash, because that's the culture out there. But I stay to myself. I go to their little meetings at first, because every night they would have a little meeting where they had a shot caller, they had a right-hand man. That's the structure. There's always a shot caller and a right-hand man, and the shot caller is the one that basically decides what the right-hand man needs to do to enforce it. That's what I peeped, you know. So I get this rude awakening in this transfer dorm for the LA County Jail, where they put you initially when you go in to decide where they're going to send you, because there's like 20,000 beds in the LA County system. In like 7 or 8 jails, you got Wayside, Supermax, Men's Central, and when you first come through booking, they put you in a transfer dorm, and that's where I was at, which the politics was strong in there. As soon as you walked in, there was representatives of your race standing up by the door asking you what you are. If you're white, you really only got 2 options. You're either a Wood or you're a homie, because you can run Mexican if you're cool with them and they accept you, you know. If you're black, there's all types of different things, like, you know, you got the Crips, the Bloods, and there's a little saying that they got. They'll stand up by the door, and if they see one of their enemies come in, they'll look at him and tell him, I need that. And they go to the back of the dorm and they fight, and it's all kinds of weird shit like that. Well, being from Louisiana, I'm trying to wrap my head around all this shit at once. And I'm like a fish out of water a little bit, because instantly, like I said, they didn't like you because they think you're trying to talk black, right? Yep. They don't like our vernacular down here. And I just stayed to myself, and I did the bare minimum of what I had to do as a white man to get past this dorm. But I still wasn't ready to give up on it yet, right? So I get transferred to Wayside South, which is a good yard. Being in Wayside South was like being in prison. The rest of the LA County Jail, you might be lucky to go out on the yard once a week. In Wayside, they had a quad like that. It was, and, you know, the gun towers and razor wire fences, but it was outside. It was like being in prison. So everybody wanted to stay there, which created a weird dynamic, right? Because you had these gangs pushing the envelopes in there still, and these shot callers, but they also had this program called Merit that the sheriff, Leroy Baca, was trying to change the culture of the jail with. Now, later on, I found out the reason he was doing it was because he was about to be indicted, and eventually he was indicted. He was trying to create mitigating circumstances. Look, I did all these good things for these gangs in these jails, trying to, you know, change the culture in there. But what Merit was, an inmate teacher would come in once a day at the front of the dorm and give a class with a whiteboard and dry erase and all. And it was all ways to get jobs and all just positive stuff, and why it'd be good to leave the gangs and all that stuff. And at the time, I was coming down from a methamphetamine addiction, and it was the only positive shit I saw, because other than that, it was just like every night when they'd go to bed, a white representative would give up and give like a day report on what had happened, right? They'd say, radio, radio, radio. If you heard radio, you had to shut up and listen. And they'd say something, and then they'd say goodnight to the woodpile. And then the homies would do it the same thing. They'd say some shit in Spanish or whatever it was. I can't remember. It was like the military or something they had going, like this version of street military. But they allowed this guy to come in and teach this class, because if they didn't, you'd get kicked off the Supermax. And nobody was trying to do that. So they would allow the class to happen, but nobody was supposed to go to it, right? Well, the guy that was coming in my dorm and giving the class was a gifted speaker. And he was getting up there, and the shit he was saying, bro, it was giving me hope from, you know, a distance. I started going and sitting down in the class, right? So I got kind of like, they didn't really say nothing to me because they didn't have a crew strong enough around me to do it. The whites didn't, but I could tell they didn't like it.
Yeah.
And after I did it, there was like 3 more people. White dudes came and sat down. I said, fuck it too, you know? And then it got to the point where they had Mexicans, like there were gangbangers coming and sitting down trying to, because the judges in the courts were starting to give the program and people in it play at court. You know what I'm saying? Because they recognize that, you're kind of putting your life on the line, even trying to change like this publicly in front of everybody. Because if you get transferred out of South, you go to Wayside Supermax or wherever, and they know you was in that class and participating, you'll get boo-bopped, which that's a whole nother thing. I got to explain boo-bop now, right? What a boo-bop is, if you break one of the inmate deemed rules, the shot caller and the right-hand man have a court hearing, have kangaroo court, and they sentence you to either burpees, like so you got 1,000 burpees you got to do, and if you're white, you get a 23-second boo-bop. The reason for the 23 seconds is W is the 23rd letter of the alphabet. Now, if you're Mexican, you get a 13-second boo-bop. Now, the boo-bop is 3 members of your own race jump on you and try to punch you down. You get jumped. 23 seconds, 13 seconds for Mexicans. That might not sound like a lot of time, but it's not an exact science either. It's not like they've got a stopwatch and they're going to stop it right on 23 seconds. Stop beating him. Stop trying to knock him out. It don't work like that. Depending on what you did to get sentenced to that, they may count 23 seconds out and be almost a minute. Like 1, 2, 3, that type of shit. So it's misleading. Now, once that merit program came in and started really taking hold through me, I was being an outsider. I underestimated the gang shit a little bit. And I was like, all gangs are for pussies is what I had in my head, because that's kind of how we grow up down here. But I didn't realize how dangerous pussies can be, right? Now, so this merit class starts catching on in this politic dorm with me sitting down first, taking the class, which was taught by a black inmate, which was the problem for most of these gangs that weren't allowing their members to go sit down and take the class, which was really holding them back because the courts were giving action to people that were involved in it. Like if you went to court and said, oh, well, he's taking this class, they were liable to give you probation instead of prison time. Yeah. So you can imagine people wanted to go. Until I sat down, none of these guys came. Once I did, it was like 3 white dudes immediately came up there and sat down too and started taking the class and signed their names. Not long after, here comes some Pisces. Pisces are in the class now, which are older Mexican dudes that were born in Mexico and just ended up in California. It's like their uncles and shit, the gang members of Southsiders. And I'll never forget it, the day 2 active gang members came and sat down in that class, and that was the final straw. That was the final straw. The drama happened immediately. 3 Serranos got scalded in hot water, snuck up behind the black teacher, who we called white shirts. The teachers that taught merit program all had these white shirts. And our teacher he was such a good speaker, he had endeared himself to everybody. He was giving everybody hope, which is something in there that scares. Yeah. Now, these gang members snuck up to the side of him like they were going to go out the door of the dorm, but instead, they threw the scalding hot water in his face, bro. He screams. They jump on him with slicing tools. They had razor blades melted on the toothbrushes and stringed up, and they come in slashing on him, cutting him open, and blood starting to go everywhere. As soon as everybody at the table that was taking the class realized what was going on, we all jumped up. And all the black dudes laid into their ass, those 3 guys with the weapons. And here come the rest of them. Big old fight breaks out, bro. It's a race riot. I wanted to get involved and help my teacher. But I didn't do it because I saw another white dude that I was cool with jumped up and ran to go help the teacher, and one of the other black guys swung on him, hit him, knocked him out. Which later on they laughed about that shit because it was a friendly fire incident, is what it was. But in the LA County Jail, they're so used to having these race riots between whites and blacks, and the Mexicans grouped up with the whites going at the blacks, that just to see someone, it's like you almost need shirts of skins. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Oh, that was a shirt. Let me get him. They didn't realize it was, it was an ally. Well, by the end of that little riot, all the Southsiders who were outnumbered got smashed and thrown out the front door of that dorm, bro, is what happened. The cops came in and they went up to everybody on their bunks. They said, "What are you?" And if you answered wrong, like you was in one of these gangs, then you got shipped immediately. Now, people that were in gangs still hid out and didn't leave and stayed behind to cause trouble. So it wasn't really like all the dorms at that point went merit, because we still had some troublemakers in there.
Yeah.
Now, I'll never forget it. One night, they had these 3 young white kids that were by my bed talking about they were about to go out the door, because that South was like in prison. The door was open on the door. You could go out to the next door. Now there's guard towers out. You're not going nowhere. You know what I'm saying? But it was the best part of the LA County Jail. They were being talked into by a shot caller to go run into the trustee dorm next door and attack a trustee. And I heard that shit. I shouldn't have did it, but I spoke up. I said, "Man, don't do that stupid ass shit. What's going to happen is you're going to end up with an escape charge, and you're going to wish you never did it. And they're going to send you to some fucked up yard when you leave here. Are you really that scared of people that you're just going to blindly listen? That's why they call y'all torpedoes, huh? Well, in Louisiana, we call y'all crash test dummies, bro. That's what we call y'all." And they kind of like, it was like 3 of them, and 2 of them were like, "Man, he's right. Fuck that. I'm not doing that." And the next thing I know, the other little guy called me the N-word. He said, "That's because you always hanging out with them N-words. Because you're an N." Like, I don't want to say it on here. Called me the N-word. Well, I knew from hearing the rules in there that if anybody calls you that, you have the right to take off on them. As a matter of fact, if they find out you didn't, it's like somebody jacking off in the shower on you here. You know what I mean? And you didn't do nothing about it. So as soon as I heard it, I said, "Oh, man, that's the hand I fan with. I'm going to smoke this fool." I jumped off my bed. He goes running to the back of the dorm and stands next to the shot caller. I walked up and I still gave him a chance. I said, "Apologize." I said, "Apologize." And he went, as soon as he did it, I said, bam, I stuck him, bro. He went down. The shot caller jumped back like this. He didn't know why I did it, He said, "What's going on?" I said, "He called me the N-word." He said, "Oh, yeah?" And he said when he woke up, they made him do burpees. They made him do burpees and had the little kangaroo court for him. And I was back there watching him fucking work out with a swollen eye. And tension started building more on that tier between me and this little faction of white guys that were still left in there that didn't like the merit shit.
Yeah.
And one night, the shot caller of them was back in the shower part. He got into it with one of the black dudes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had kind of gotten friendly with them at that point a little bit. You know what I'm saying? And they got in an argument. A bunch of black dudes went back there to surround them like they were going to jump them. And I went back there, stood next to a white dude. I said, "Man, it ain't going down like that either." You know what I mean? And after that, that shot caller came up to my base and said, "Man, I was wrong about you. It's not that you don't want to be white. You just don't like being told what to do." I said, "Well, that's not how we raised where I'm from, bro. This is not how it is where we're from, bro."
And I'm gonna chime in and kind of share with you on this in this particular part, because making prison content and content on YouTube, you get a lot of that, in the comment sections about being from Louisiana. People don't understand how down here, like you said, it's not that we don't respect the political structures that they do have, or we don't respect what they got. It's just that we were raised different. We definitely
We got our own.
There you go.
We got our own. And our political structure is, if you don't take up for yourself, nobody else will help you. If you do and we see it, you're supposed to help.
Right.
That's it. You know, there's no automatic because you white, we friends, you know, but you know, there's still structure down here. It's just different. And if you let another inmate tell you what to do, you're their bitch. You know, out there, it's like, if you don't listen, you're the bitch. It's like flip. The script's flipped.
Yeah, it's wild, man, and to know that you're telling it from a perspective of somebody who's been in Louisiana and been in California.
Yeah, I've been three different. I was in Colorado too. That had politics, but it wasn't as strong as California. California is what you call mandatory politics. Like, you don't have a choice. You know what I mean? Now you do have a choice. Now you fell off, huh?
Yeah.
Now you do have a choice, but are you strong enough to do it? Is what it is. And I wasn't going to their meetings and shit after a while. I wasn't, and they had me labeled like a renegade. Like I didn't want to have nothing to do with the car, which I didn't like. The way they were telling people what to do and all that shit. You know, but they never had a crew around me strong enough to get me. If I'd have went to prison, they'd have stabbed me. I already know it now. I underestimated it. I probably would have got killed in prison out there. But it is what it is. God protected me. You know. Now, so once that happened with that shot caller, and he said, well, you know, I had you wrong and all that, you know. It wasn't but about another week before they came in, the guards did, and they were like, who wants to go to a straight up merit dorm? We're creating merit dorms where you can get your education, the courts will recognize it, and you can start working your way out of this drug, addicted life here. And I put my hands up. No other of the white dudes that know, they're all scared of each other. You know, I fucking put my hands up. They were glad to see me go. They were glad to see me go because it was like when you don't totally run by their little standards, they take it as a threat. And if they don't do nothing about it, then later on, man, you was letting that white Crip run around the yard and all this and that. You were talking about white Crips. There was a white Crip that came on that yard while I was there. He was cool.
Yeah.
He was cool, man. He was from Long Beach Insane, which is a Crip set in Long Beach. And they didn't do shit to him. And he was a savage anyway. You know what I'm saying?
Did he run with the blacks on a day-to-day?
Oh, that's all he did. Yeah. And he ran it, but that was once the dorms had, most of the politics shit was out of it, though. You know what I'm saying? If he'd went in there when I first got in there, they would have tried to pull some shit, you know? But eventually, I worked my way into a totally merit dorm, right? I'm in the merit dorm running the classes and shit. I'm getting action at court. I was facing a life sentence, bro. I was a 3-striker. Now, all of a sudden, they're talking about a year in jail. So I wasn't about to let these pussies scare me and spend the rest of my life in jail, bro.
Trying to get back to Louisiana.
I was trying to get back to Cajun country, you know? Now, where was I at? I wanted to tell you something about it.
Merit dorm. You went back into school.
Yeah, so I go through the merit dorm for these months, and I start rising in the program. So once they moved us all into a merit dorm that was only merit, and they set forth a curriculum where we were going to school every day, getting action at court for it, things got a lot more peaceful for a little while. And I started rising in the program, right? Because being from out of town, I had a different mindset on things. Well, one day they had tryouts to become a white shirt. What that original teacher that came in and they attacked in the riot was, they had tryouts for that. There was like 20 of us went up. After 10, they were like, basically, we got all the people we need. But they still interviewed me anyway. And I went in there and told them, said, look, man, I'm from a different state where it don't go down like this. You're friends with who you're friends with, and you treat people how you want to be treated, right? And you trust who's trustworthy. I don't believe what these guys have ingrained in their head is really what they think it is. They think they've got some type of peaceful system that this allows them to segregate by race and keep the peace. Well, it's really just a truce. It's an armed truce. And I gave them that little spiel, and next thing you know, they added a bed for me. They added a spot for me because I blew them away with what I said, being not the typical West Bank wood piler, you know?
Yeah.
And they move us into this special dorm just for white shirts. In the same yard, South Yard, they called it the White House, bro. We had our own laundry machines. We had our own refrigerator. They used to put the fights on the TV and shit. We had a lot of privileges. Over the walls, all had sayings like iron sharpens iron. The only catch was to live in there and have all these great things, you know, you had to go give classes in politic dorms where the gangs were at and the danger. So I started taking a whiteboard, picture this, into gang dorms and giving merit classes, bro, on why racism and all this shit was bad and going to lead you back to prison. And I found out I was good at it. I was so good at it that at one point, the whole cycle of bullshit started happening again, where somebody sat down that wasn't supposed to, and then here comes some more. And then the next day I went in there to teach, and they beat the dude up behind the class in front of me. And it wasn't nothing I could do. I'm watching this guy get whooped on, and they went way longer than 13 seconds, bro. That was like 13 freaking, minutes, it felt like. But I had to watch him get beat up and know that I caused it and just go on with my class. I had no choice. What could I do, And then for several months, I was in that White House. Eventually, I got sentenced to 1 year and basically time served and sent home. I had all these certificates and shit and I had been writing short stories. That's why people wonder why I'm so good at the TikTok thing. I used to come up with all these concepts to write short stories to. I just switched it over to videos when I got out. But on the day that I was released, the night before, they started processing you out, because getting out of the LA County Jail is even more of an ordeal than getting into it. It's a series of holding tanks. They move you around. First, I had to be transferred from Wayside South to Men's Central and then go through the whole rigmarole. And I finally got all the way up to where my clothes were at, and they lost my clothes. So I got a paper suit now. I get released out into the wilds of Los Angeles in a paper suit, bro. I got all this shit I'm trying to carry from a basically rehab program, the merit program, all these certificates and shit, but no numbers to call once you get released. And I just start walking through Los Angeles, bro. After about 2 blocks, my pants rip. I'm in trouble now because I'm walking around with this paper suit starting to become like not good enough to cover me. I called one of my drug friends because they'll always help you. Went over there, relapsed immediately. It took me about a week before I was looking to commit crimes again, like I was in the same shit that had led me in there, Yep. And I made the decision at that point. I called my father, and he wired me a bus ticket, got me out of there. He saved my life. Back to Hot Springs, Arkansas, where I was there like a week before he kicked me out in the snow, bro. I had never seen the snow before. Kicks me out in the snow. I broke into an abandoned house and ended up hitchhiking back to New Orleans with a homeless chick and her dog for sympathy, bro. That's what happened. Get all the way back to New Orleans, went through all the, trials and tribulations of not having a place to live in your hometown is embarrassing, right? Trying to come up from the floor. What these guys didn't understand in LA was I didn't listen to the judge, the cops, or my parents. What made them think I was going to listen to them? And then you see them on the street, and they got a backpack, they're homeless on a bicycle, trying to extort somebody at a food truck stand or something.
So let me ask this question. Looking back, do you think the merit program helped you change your life?
The merit program helped me tremendously. Before I went into that program, I was an atheist. I didn't believe in God. Growing up, my father was an atheist. I'll never forget bringing home a dead bird one day in a shoebox that I found it alive on the recess yard at school. I brought it home. It died. I asked him, I said, is it sleeping? Like, what's going on with this bird, right? Why won't it wake up? And he told me it's dead. I said, well, what is dead? He said, dead's a little bit like before you was born. You remember that? And I couldn't remember that. And I told him I couldn't remember. And he said, well, that's what dead is. And it hit me all like a ton of bricks. And I was like, I'm going to die. You're going to die. Mom's going to die. We're all going to die. You know, it's kind of the moment. It was like a shift, a timeline shift or something that I remember there. And it stuck with me the rest of my life until I got into that merit program, started going to those mandatory Christian classes that you had to take, and started reading the words in red, which are Jesus' words. And by the time I left, I knew it was real. And that has helped me as far as my life tremendously the whole time. You know, I might not be a holy roller or really stuck to it like I needed to, but I know it's real and I have hope. What's sad is I don't believe the merit program's even there anymore, because the sheriff, Leroy Baca, that started it, was in the midst of a court case, or impending one, that he knew was coming. He ended up getting arrested. And once that happened, I think they shut all that shit down. They went back to just letting the gangs control everything. I think that's what happened.
So you was there in a transitional period that didn't last long.
That didn't last long. But I can tell you this, it's lasted with me throughout the years and influenced a lot of my good decisions. Still plenty bad ones though, you hear me? Not long after they beat that gang member up in front of me for trying to join my class, I went in there with a teammate, because we used to teach in pairs. They didn't just send you into these gang dangerous dorms with one person. You always had a partner. And this guy was from Detroit. We called him Detroit. Black dude, white shirt. Well, halfway through the class, he starts acting like he's not feeling well. His tummy hurts and he's got to go back to the dorm. And he leaves. And I'm there by myself. Well, I felt a bunch of weird energy, but nothing happened. Later on, I was told they were supposed to stab me that day, that they had broken a piece of porcelain off one of the urinals or something, and they were going to attack me. So I felt, and still do, that God protected me through that. Because when you're doing the right thing, and I felt like I was doing the right thing, I was 100% down with the merit. Like it was a gang, because it felt like, with all this Jim Crow-like shit around me, that I was part of the last little piece of the civil rights movement or something.
That's good.
You know? So don't never be scared or bullied into doing the wrong thing. Because you know what the right thing is. We're all born with that. God put that in you. And before the merit program, I could have never said that it was God that put that in me. But now I know.